Hi friends, welcome to Taming Python tutorial series. In this video, we're going to talk about managing time periods using the time delta class inside the datetime module. In the previous video, we just talked about using the datetime class inside datetime module to create and access the components of a datetime class. So datetime class was useful to store the datetime as an object. The same way, the time delta class inside datetime module is useful to store time period as an object. Okay, so let us see an example here. If you want to create a time delta object, so the name is time delta, right? It is a time delta is a class name inside the datetime module. Okay, so if you want to create a time delta object to express a time period, you can use this function dt.timeDelta and you just write whatever the components you want to specify. Suppose so let's get started. So I'm going to take a blank folder and I'm going to open it with VS Code. Now my blank folder is open. I'm going to create a new file and I'm going to name it index.py. I'm going to use the Jupyter cells feature, so I'll just write hashtag %%. Now Jupyter cells will be enabled in my file, so I'm going to run this cell, and here I'm going to do it as usual, import datetime as dt. So now I imported the datetime module as dt. Now I'll run this cell again. So now I have imported datetime as dt, right? Now let me try to create a time period object which is time delta object using its constructor method. So how can I do that is, suppose if I want to create a time period, suppose like t delta equal to dt dot time delta of, if you want to give time period like 10 days 3 hours 4 minutes, so I just write days equal to 10, hours equal to 3, minutes equal to 4. I want to give some 20 seconds, seconds equal to 20. So that's all. Now I have stored a time period inside an object. So if I run this cell and if I see what is t delta, you can see t delta is time delta class which has these components. It is just saying 10 days and this many seconds. So it is just the way it displays, but we have successfully stored our time period inside this object called t delta. Now let's try to see the type of this class. We just write the type t delta. It is datetime.timeDelta. That means it's a class called time delta inside a datetime module. If you want to create time delta as a difference of date times, so how can I do that? It's really simple. So if I just write t1 equal to dt dot datetime. Now I'm creating a datetime for explaining 2020. Suppose I want to go for January 1st. Okay, and let me take current time equal to dt dot datetime dot now. So now what I did was, I'm creating a datetime object called t1 which is 1st January 2020. Now I am creating another datetime object called current time which is the present time. So let me run this. You can see t1 and current time are initialized. Now if you want to create time delta, if you want to know how much is current time from t1, so how much time has passed since t1, I'll just write t passed, time passed equal to current time minus t1. This is a difference of two datetime classes. So the difference of two datetime classes will be a time delta object. So if I run this and you see what is t passed is, you can see here datetime dot time delta 351 days, these many seconds and these many microseconds. So this much time has passed from 1st January till now. So what we did was, we created a time delta object out of a difference of two times. Okay, so now we have seen how to subtract two date times to get a time delta. Now if you want to add a time delta to a date time, suppose let me take a datetime object called t3 and I will keep it as dt dot date time. So if you want to keep it as 10th December, I'll just write 2020 12 10. So now t3 is 10th December. If you want to add 3 days to t3, how can I do that? I'll just write t4 equal to t3 plus dt dot time delta. I just wanted to add 3 days, right? Days equal to 3, and if you want to add 3 days 5 hours, hours equal to 5. That's all. So now I'm adding 3 days and 5 hours to t3. and storing that in T4. So let me try to run this cell and see what's there in T4. Remember, T3 was 10th December 2020, right? So T4 is 13th December 2020, 5 hours, because I added 3 days and 5 hours. So this way you can very easily add time periods to datetime objects using time delta objects, right? So this is one more important use of time delta. The next topic is how to access the components of time delta. So suppose if you want to see an example time delta here, t pass, you can see the default representation is like this. You can even access the components of a variable called t pass. So I'll show you how to do that. T passed dot days and print it 351 days, right? The days component is 351. And if I want to access the seconds component, I will write tpass dot seconds, and if I run this, 79497 seconds, this was this, right? And if I want to access the microseconds part, I will write tpass dot microseconds, and this is the microseconds. You can see it here also, right? It's matched. So this way, using this dot notation, you can even access the individual components of the time delta object. Here tpass was the time delta object, remember? You want to have all the time period into one variable, so you can write tpass dot total seconds. So what it does is it will give the time period elapsed in a single value, which is the total number of seconds. So let me try to run this. Oh, it was a function actually, so I have to write dot total seconds, and if I run this, so the time period, the time delta object is actually equivalent to this many seconds. So this is how you can get the whole time span in a number, which is total number of seconds, using this total seconds function. So let's quickly summarize what we have learned in this session. First thing was, we are talking about time delta object inside the datetime module. So first you need to import datetime module, import datetime as dt, and then you can create a time delta, which is time period, using this constructor method, which is dt.timeDelta, and you can give whatever the time periods you want to give, like 10 days, 3 hours, and if you want only 10 days, you just write days equal to 10, something like that. Okay, so this way you can create a time period very easily. And if you want to create a time period as difference of two date times, the example I've given was how much time has elapsed since 1st January. So T1 was 1st January, current time is dt.datetime.now, and if I subtract these two, I'll get a datetime time delta object. So the difference of two datetime objects is actually a time delta object. So this is what we learned in this section. And then the next thing was how to add time periods to a datetime object. So if I add, so in this example what I did was I created a datetime object, this is 10 December, and then I added 3 days and 5 hours. So using this time delta object, 3 days 5 hours, I added to T3. Now I got a new datetime object, which is T4. So this way you can even add time periods to datetime object, and can I access each component of a time delta object using methods like dot microsecond, dot second, dot days, and you can use this total seconds function to get the total number of seconds equivalent of the time delta object. And you can see time delta class is very useful for datetime manipulation. I've written a blog post on managing time periods using time delta in Python. Be sure to check it out, and I've also given some sample codes which you can practice upon. I've also given some references, so be sure to check out the blog post which is given in the description of this video. That's it guys, thank you for watching.